why we're here today. We're here to listen to Audrey and watch Audrey. And I know it's going to be a delight because she's a delight. I'm so happy that I crossed paths with her a few years ago. I was astounded when I saw her work, and really was. All the things that we were trying to teach with shape design and understanding value to describe shape, everything that I try to talk about when teaching the basics of picture making, this young lady does in a really, really high level. And she's absolutely astonishing. I mean, I can't say enough good things. So, and she's also really nice. So, Audrey, I'm going to let you share your screen because I want you to show your work first. I'll stop sharing and then you can take over the screen.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Very kind. I'm going to share my screen
here. What I love about this is that I can actually watch this a little bit. I don't have to be timing or pulling in stuff. Pay attention.
Let's see. Let's see, it doesn't look like it did before. Just a moment. I can't seem to see my screen share. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I'm here.
Let me try one more time.
Yeah.
I can see it now.
There you go.
Cool. Well, again, thank you so much for having me. A little lipstick on my teeth, hold on. But yeah, thank you so much for everyone who came out today. I really do appreciate being part of this group and being able to draw with you live today. It's a really fun challenge to do. So I'm excited to get to expand a little outside of my class to more people. So a little bit about my work. I'll share some portfolio pieces. I work in a variety of materials, so I would consider myself mixed media illustrator. I'll flip through some of my work. Today, the image that I'm going to work on also, I'm going to do mixed media. So I'll flip through some of these and I'll let you know what materials that I work with. I don't know if it's on, might be on automatic play. Is there a way to stop that? Hopefully it's good. But these two are mixed media, traditional and digital. The one on the left is charcoal graphite with a digital finish technique, and the one on the right is I think acrylic, pastel, colored pencil, and black gesso. So this one is in a similar technique where it's charcoal and pencil with the digital finish. So I'm also really into acrylic painting, so I don't know why that's jumping. So here's a couple samples of that kind of work. I love having a good character. These are both acrylic as well. And these are some pencil, digital, mixed media, and charcoal. These two, the one that was in the thumbnail, are they're all digital, but they have like a pencil texture base to them. Same with this. This one's, I have a couple images from college still in there just because they started off my journey of what kind of art that I am making now. And then we have some more watercolor pencil. Sometimes it's hard to remember what I used for all of these, but and then I love working with pencil too. I have found though that sometimes pencil demos can be a little hard because that's a slower medium to watch. But I definitely have a love for rendering textures, surface textures, all kinds of things in pencil. I'm a lover of creatures. Charcoal and ink. More watercolor. Some playful ones, I think some sort of mixture of watercolor, gesso, and ink.
Wow, that's killer.
Yeah, I love when I'm not taking myself too seriously. I usually make
That piece on the right. Oh my God, that's crazy.
my boyfriend thinks that they look like him. Maybe. Got some watercolor and pen.
Dale Stefanos has a question for you. What size is the graphite work in general?
Graphite work, I used to, let's see. I mean, I try to stick to somewhat standard sizes for framing. So, like I'd say, I'm looking at the one on my wall, maybe like 11 by 14, and then like a central image. Can't work too small because I really like I said, getting into the surface texture, and that can get tricky. But you can get pretty detailed. I do like to work in a size that I can finish though. So I've been working kind of. These are all pretty small. These sort of studies.
And then Gail Cobb has asked a question. What
Mhm.
materials do you use to blend your pencil drawings? Paintbrush, blending stump?
Oh, well, I don't go about thinking about blending too much, but I do have I try to create as much as I can just through making marks, as much like of a transition. And then if I do want a softer edge, I'll use a blending stump. But I try to make that be really intentional and not be the crux of my technique. So, but a blending stump when I do, for sure. I included this in here because I love showing where I want to push my work more. So I've done some work with sculpture, not too much, but I really do love having some dimensional thing going on or thinking that way while I'm going. Here's some fun guys. I think they look like me a little bit. There's my spirit in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Got my light wild
Look
eye.
like your drawings, but they don't look like you.
I always feel like all of the characters or things that I draw, they have my eyes or my dad's eyes or something. Like here's a little one that I gave a sculpt to.
How soft or not soft are the pencils you use?
I don't like super hard pencils for the most of it. Like I would say like 2 and 4B might be like the majority. So I like to just challenge myself to be gentle with them. So maybe like a lighter B. But I kind of because I work with so many materials, I'd like to borrow techniques or ways of thinking from other materials. And when I ink and when I watercolor, I'm very used to like blocking in shapes. So almost like, I mean, I know like Alan Williams has talked about it, but like Alan Williams, like Mike Mignola, they like think about like blocking out shapes and values. So when I'm working with pencil, I like to think about like the big value picture first and then how it transitions from those areas. But I'm not like a super scanner when I go through. I try to think about like the basic structure. And then
You're getting bombarded with questions here. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. And that makes me feel better. So,
all the series of faces all done with watercolor?
Yeah. So the reason that I did that was first and foremost fun. Second is because I wanted to get better with watercolor and I wanted to get better with my color palette or color selections, just my sense in general. So I decided to do something that I was interested in, was fun, and to do it over and over again. With the same lighting, the only thing that's changing is the color and the expression and like the sense of character. And basically that has a fun series where, you know, you have one constant and something always changing, but it's all watercolor though. So I feel like a tighter technique. I was inspired by my college professor, Don Brandis at Ringling, who did this with a portrait of a student, and he tried it with every single media combination he could try it. So it was like the same portrait, and I always wanted to use that in my own way to get better at something, and it does. It helps. So. Some portraits, and I think this is the last picture I have in my like portfolio sharing section, but it was, I always put it last, and I like tell my classes that like I like to share this one last because I think it is important to once in a while like give a go at something that you're, you know, a little uncomfortable with or you don't do as much. And I don't do a lot of specifically narrative or graphic novel work in that sort of way. So this was my favorite time that I ever like, you know, put my heart into giving that a try. And it's always one of my favorite pieces, even though it's, you know, it's been a while, but I really like that I challenged myself to think that way. It's one of the things that I'm happiest that I tried.
I'm going to read a couple more things to you, Audrey.
Sure.
I like turning my drawings into 3D projects too.
Yeah.
And somebody wrote, I have one of these tattooed. I don't know if you knew that or not. One of your
if it's the person who got the green one tattooed, that's super cool. And thank you for sending me that picture. If it is you from Instagram, thank you. It's always an honor. Yeah, I think you got that one on that I use as my icon. That's so great.
Someone asked me, Neil asked me, would it be possible to save questions for after the demo? And I'm going to say no, just because it makes the artist comfortable, I think, to talk about them, makes it easier to go. Go ahead, Audrey. Sorry, no, I was just saying somebody was suggesting that we held off on questions, and I don't want to. I want to.
Oh no, trust me, it's fine. It's fine by me. I love to. Yeah, that was mostly what I wanted to share of my work. Do we have any more questions? I can take a couple.
No, I think we're good for now. Do you prefer heavy or fluid acrylics?
Oh, I don't know. I might sound like a fool on the spot, but I don't know if I'm exactly sure of the difference, but I'm pretty sure like this brand that I use is heavy. I don't think it's very fluidy. So I'm putting myself on the spot here, but I'm pretty sure the answer is heavy.
Yeah, those are heavy.
Okay. I was like, I think I would know if they were fluid, but I do use water, and occasionally, if I want to, I use the slow dry. Most of the stuff that I use is Liquitex. Today I am going to be starting on some cold pressed watercolor paper, and I don't know if I'm going to be using any acrylic, but I may if it calls for it. John, do you mind if I realize that my brush pen is in the other room? Do you mind if I very quickly go grab that too?
You can't do that. Of course you can. Go ahead.
Thank you. I will be back in just a moment.
That's funny.
Her work is so beautiful.
It's amazing.
It's just, and so many different like subtleties and changes in her style in medium and
her drawing.
Gorgeous.
Turn. Fan is also going on. It is muggy here. All right. I think I'm just about ready to go. I'm gonna refresh my water, and then I'm gonna share what I'll be doing. And I am okay with with questions as we go too. So.
Right. It's part of the format. We have to do it.
Okay, good. As long as everybody knows.
Yeah. Just to let everybody know, it really does help to have somebody talking with you, and while you're doing these things. It can be really stressful on somebody to, hey, Chris Payne is in the room, and she has to do a demo in front of Chris Payne. That makes everybody nervous.
Yeah. It's
So,
just hard not hearing feedback.
that's right.
It's like a comedian in front of an empty room. Tell a joke.
It feels like everybody's left the room,
Yeah, right.
What
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, we need
I love
some
that.
applause or something in the.
No one loves me.
Yeah.
Chris,
All right.
you're getting booed, Chris.
You're getting booed. That's no good. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I'll share a little bit of my process work that goes onto the page and my thought process before, because I feel like that's useful.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna either stop share or change share here. I guess.
Now just share the right video. It will go right to it. You'll have to toggle to the other camera. Because didn't you change cameras, Audrey?
Yeah, I'm just gonna share some reference images and stuff like in just like in Photoshop. So just a moment and I'll do that. Hopefully I don't have anything embarrassing. All right, so recently one of my favorite one of my favorite shows in on Broadway was Phantom of the Opera growing up, and on YouTube there's a website called, or there's a channel called The Show Must Go On, and they've been streaming Broadway musicals, Andrew Lloyd Webber ones, every Friday night through Saturday. And so after watching Phantom of the Opera again, there was a scene where the Phantom comes down the stairs of the Masquerade at the beginning of Act 2, and he has this incredible mask of the Red Death costume on, and I've always loved how striking it was, and I always wanted to kind of tackle it as a little, as a picture or character design. So of course I started sketching while I was watching that, just in pen, and that kind of got me going, and I was like, oh, I should do that. Hopefully it's not like too on the nose for the time, but I thought it was a really cool direction here, and it got me excited. So when I started this idea, I just started with some sketches from watching the show, and that kind of got my my juices flowing, and that's a reference picture. And then I found some other examples of that costume that's been done at a couple different performances. So I came up with this sketch on the computer, based on some of my my own sketches and an artist that inspire me. So two artists that are particularly making me like really inspired right now are Grau, the fashion designer. I think is it his first name, is it Renee, or I know the last name is Grau. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, so Grau, and then let's see, who else was I thinking of? Well, this I'm not sure who this one was, but I'll think of the other one. But I was particularly interested in that. So these are a couple reference images that that I looked at as well, and And then I ended up with this sketch. So when I'm thinking about a sketch before I go painting, sometimes I plan, you know, less, or sometimes I plan more. For this one, the important parts of what I wanted to get in this Photoshop sketch were, number one, like the general value structure. I didn't want it to be too complicated. That's what I liked about Grau's work, and it was mostly about the fashion, and also like just the color palette is going to be pretty simple. So it was more about the shape. So this could go ahead and be like a finished digital illustration, but I feel like painting is more fun. So sometimes I don't plan out as much, but because this was a live demo, I wanted to have a little something going. So from here, I'm going to turn off or switch my camera now, but these were a couple of reference images I found. There is a couple that I wanted to talk about. So, you know, there were some things that I wanted to just check. So that's me holding my tablet just to, you know, just to get a little hand if I needed it. And then this is the chandelier at the Paris Opera House with the Chagall ceiling. So the one on the top, I wanted to be, you know, somewhat, you know, inspired by that. It's really interesting. I've been there and I'd seen a terrible opera too. It's called Hansel and Gretel. Don't tell them I hated it. Let's see. Oh, here's another one I really liked. Yeah, okay, so flipping through these too much, but so that's like a general idea of what I'm looking at.
Okay, I'm going to ask you when you switch, right after you switch your camera, ask you a few questions because there's a lot of questions.
That's fine. That's fine.
And before you get, and I don't want to interrupt you right when you get started. So we'll deal with a few questions and then we'll get started. So there's some very simple ones. And I'm going to ask everybody if they could put your questions in the Q&A going forward. It's difficult for me to see both at the same time. So
I'm switching to the webcam now too. So.
Okay. What sculpting material do you use?
If I want to eventually cast something, then Monster Clay. I have had experience in Sculpey and Super Sculpey. It's fun to learn on, but eventually gets crumbly. And then I have tried a 2-part epoxy sculpting clay that you use with gloves from Smooth On. I don't remember the exact brand, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Are you using
that one was Sculpey?
Are you using a variety of surfaces, or do you have a preference?
For illustration work, yeah. So the paper I love the most, like everyone who's taken my class knows because I'm like a parrot about it, but it's BFK Reeves printmaking paper. I love gray and this like toned, like this was like a sketch I did for a high schooler like workshop the other day, but it's it makes every material kind of lay on like butter. It's really great. And then I like cold press over hot press watercolor paper because I actually enjoy the texture. And then I just have the let's see, what brand is it? The one that I'm working on is just the Arches cold press 140 pound. So
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you very much. And then do you have a different process for making editorial art versus social media or for products?
Yes. It's not like super intentional, but I think I'm a little less experimental when it comes to doing things for a client just because I like to be planned and I like to trust that I know it's going to come out. I might be experimental with a part. So I do a lot more, like we talk about at the academy and classes, like I follow like a thumbnail process, value color, like I do that kind of stuff. For my personal work, not so much. Stuff, you know, stuff that I might post on social media, it might be straight from like hand to the paper, or I might just start with a silhouette and go. I might be very intuitive with color, and I might not make many studies for it. So yeah, I'm much less planned when I do my my learning.
Okay,
But
so,
I'm taking out of what works.
and this kind of ties into that. I see that you experiment a lot. How important do you think it is for an artist to experiment with materials and projects? If you had to tell us one thing that you learned from doing it, what is it?
Well, for the first part of the question, it's like integral to my happiness. I'm not happy if I am bored. So the experimentation and the playfulness of seeing what works and trying things out and switching materials and switching, I don't say switch styles, but switch application. It's important to my well-being as a creator. So that's part one. And then part two is like advice about that per se, right?
Right.
Or
What one thing that you can take away from doing a lot of experimental work?
There's always a way to move forward. There's always a way to move forward. I've learned that, especially through working with mixed media. I remember in college, I thought that you had to finish every piece and it had to be finished with one medium or you throw it away. Through my sketchbook, I've learned that if you hate the silhouette of a thing that you've done, you can just come in and chop some black or white gesso in that, and you can just change that sucker up and then can keep working back on top of it, you know, if you really want to. There's always a way forward, you know, and just, you know, take the pressure off sometimes. And also don't be afraid to redraw something, but still, you know, there's always a way forward. So,
Okay, great.
mixed media.
I'm not going to ask you anything for a while, and I'm going to tell everybody else, put your questions in the Q&A because I'm not going to pay attention to the chat for questions.
All right. Well, here we go. Let's see, it's kind of funny. I got to think of where I want to start. That's the fun part about mixed media. You have to decide where you're going to start. So I'm going to talk about how I got this on the board, just very briefly. On a window or a light board, window for me, I go ahead and trace my design and I inverse that and then plop it right onto the paper I want. And you can also print it on if you want to. I actually would like to get a printer to be able to do that, but right now I don't mind doing that because you can design a little bit while you're tracing. So that's fun. And then I just use a hard edge of something and transfer that over. So I've got a pretty good base for that. All right. So that's how I'm on my board. Hopefully, I'm gonna put one more light on. A little bit brighter. And yeah, so that's what I have on my paper, and I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna keep the chat open on the side, but I'm gonna keep my reference pictures up. So I'll be able to hear you and you guys can read the chat all you want. All right. Also, if you're seeing all four panelists, you can pin the art one to the center. So yeah, it's always
Audrey,
there.
That was my fault. Hey, all hundreds of you, my apologies.
It's okay.
Timmy, is her video, is her spotlighted now?
I pinned mine,
Yes,
but
yes, it is now. I'm sorry. I had it set on
Right.
yeah. I had it set on gallery leading up to this. So
Okay.
okay. So I'm not used to working this big, but I have a, let's see. I don't know if I can show my palette or not, but I have palettes that are split into warm and cool. I'm working with a limited palette right now, so I'm not really concerned about that. I'm gonna take my my cadmium red light, and I'm gonna have some fun with that. I decided that I want to put the red in first because you have to think about what reads well for a demo. Not everything. I swear, like I mentioned before, I tried to do for the very first one I ever did with Visual Arts Passage. I started off doing doing one with pencil. It was so slow.
It was good.
I'm so happy that I had another one. Like I had a short acrylic one that was also planned. And I put a little bit of yellow into it since I want it to be warmer. And sometimes I'm more planned with my work, like I mentioned, but I am gonna try to finish this in, or as much as I can in the time, because I know that I want somebody to get this guy and be able to bid on it, right?
Well, it's a beautiful drawing and it looks great. So
Yeah. So since I want to become good at every material in the world and then never satisfied, I sometimes try to think like a different, like in a different material as I'm working. So I love thinking about printmaking while I'm working, even though I don't have much experience with printmaking.
Audrey, how did you get your drawing on the board?
Oh, I did mention that earlier, but it is.
Sorry.
I'm
I'm reading questions. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm nice, Audrey. No, it's really okay. I traced it on, you can either use a light board or window, and then you can well, you have to make sure it's inversed, and then you pop the pencil. I'll show. And then you pop the pencil graphite side onto your paper. You can also print it if you have a printer. I currently do not have a printer. So. Also, bear with me because I'm watercoloring on a board that's upright. So switch it down. So we might get some drippage happening, but right now I'm mostly covering it. The nice thing about this paper is it does leave the pigment wet for a little bit, so I can make it more saturated where I need it to be.
hey, and John, I was just gonna let you know, I just turned off all the other panelists' video. That way we can really maximize the stream quality.
Oh,
So.
okay. Good.
Oh my gosh. So, you know, when I said there were two artists that I was really thinking about, the other one was Yoshitaka Amano. I don't know why his name escaped me. There's a really great video of like a tour of his studio going on right now too. I don't know why I blanked on that, but I'm glad it came back. Yeah. I love illustrations that are like, they have a good sense of character, but also fashion. So.
Do you photograph your graphite work, or do you scan them?
I'm a scanner. I don't photograph anything because I don't have a good enough camera. A great scanner though.
What digital programs do you use?
Just Photoshop. I love Procreate and would love to get it, but I don't have it. I don't have an iPad. I feel like all my answers are going to be, this is what I have and this is why I don't have the other thing. But yeah, just Photoshop for me. I know how to use Illustrator, but I don't have it. I don't pay for it currently because I don't use it.
Can you use watercolor resist on the BFK Reeves, or will it tear when you remove it?
I don't use watercolor on that paper.
Yeah.
I use that for dry, well, oh, and when I do use acrylic on it, which is my favorite material for Reeves, even though it's really great for like actually like pencil work and stuff like that, and pastel, I think it's really awesome with. But no, I don't really like do any kind of watercolor stuff with that.
Okay. And so the question now, and I think you may have said it, but what kind of paper are you working on? Do you typically pre-wet your watercolor surface?
Depends on the piece. This one is Arches Cold Press, 140 pound. And right now, the whole piece is not going to be watercolor. So part of it is going to be like ink. So I am not super wetting it right now. I'm just wetting the areas that I'm working on. Yeah. But yeah, I love doing a wet on wet technique. For those little faces that that we were chatting about before, those like for the base layer of those, I do a wet on wet technique where I mask in everything except for the little tiny highlights on their faces, and then I just pop color and drop it in there. So.
Any scanner recommendations?
Yep. I recommend a V600 Epson Perfection. It is a lifesaver and I love it. It can't like photograph really large, but if you photograph your work in half, you can stitch it together in Photoshop. There's like a program option in Photoshop for that.
What brand of paint or watercolor are you using?
I use a mix. So I'm like, most of my stuff is Winsor & Newton, and then occasionally I'll have like a kind of like a cheaper tube of Reeves like left over from something. But I mostly like to stick to like, yeah, like something close to like Grumbisher or Winsor & Newton. I'm just pulling up some of my pictures from Pinterest here. I make private boards sometimes when I'm gathering little pieces of fashion or time period things. Kind of fun. I don't know what I did before Pinterest. I hardly ever use it to organize my life. Just art. Okay. And as for brushes, I have a variety of like synthetic sables, and then I have one sable that I guiltily enjoy. Yeah, so I'm leaving a couple, I'm gonna start leaving a little, a couple areas blank. I wanna let some of the robe be defined with a little bit of dimension in the watercolor, and then I wanna let some of it be defined by some ink on top of it.
Okay, so question here from Paul. When you're doing digital with a base of pencil, do you build the layers of opacity using Photoshop or another app? No?
Yeah, I use all Photoshop. That's basically all I do is just play with layer modes and then find the right configuration, and then I save things into groups. And then sometimes I paint into my pencils digitally and then change the opacity and layer styles on that as well.
Here's a question that was asked much earlier. How long does it usually take you to complete one of your pictures?
Oh, I don't really time myself. That's a really hard question. I've always had a hard time answering that. Something like this, I don't know. I guess I'd have to time myself. Though I would say anything that I can answer, the ones that take longer are ones that I don't have a plan with, and I always kick myself for like not figuring out the value structure and having to like, muddle through that. But the thing that takes me longest is probably like editing something and tweaking something. I'm really picky in the later stages of working, and then really like open in the earlier stages. That's not really an answer to the question, but I don't really know.
I think the photo of your hand inspired questions about the tablet. Is that an Intuos tablet? How well are you able to work with that versus a Cintiq?
So the only Cintiq experience I had was in school. I liked it, but I had been working with an Intuos tablet probably since I was about like 15 or 16. So I had already become really accustomed to it. And then and then maybe it's the lazy person in me. I don't know. I don't want to call myself lazy, but I'm not. But like but I also didn't like that you had to use like your full body for the Cintiq and you had to like keep moving your arm around. So if I had an iPad, I think I'd like that, but I prefer an Intuos tablet or an iPad if I got one of those. I don't know, there's just something about the Cintiq that never really caught on for me. I also never could get the color correction on the ones that I used to make me happy. And yeah, but they're fine. They have their uses. I just I don't know, never really clicked with me.
Okay, so Audrey's initial rough and digital design. How long did she allow herself to settle on a final solution?
Ha, I just did that like an hour. I feel bad, but like an hour and a half before class. So
Well, I mean,
yeah.
that changes. I mean, as you mature, as you get more comfortable with this,
Yeah.
it's things get easier.
Yeah, well, I had those sketches from, you know, when I was watching the play, and so I kind of had those to work from. So when you're kind of like sketching from your sketches, it's not as hard. But I'm not going to say it's like it's not challenging, because it always is. But I think because I kind of knew the style that I wanted to do. Like I knew the you know, the style, the subject, and I knew that I wanted a limited color palette. That it didn't stump me up too badly as far as time. I probably sketched that in like an hour, or you know, within an hour. The stairs took me a second. I had to look at a couple different ways that people drew stairs, but perspective is something that I don't use like all the time, because I do a lot of character work that perspective isn't the main point of. But you know, perspective is also point of view. Is, you know, it's involved in the way you're looking at something. So you can draw a face or a head from a different perspective. So it's not always about stairs, but sometimes that stuff takes me a little bit longer to figure out.
What printer have you been looking at to print your work?
I'm not sure. I haven't put too much thought into it. But hey, if you guys want to recommend some, I would love to know what you guys use for printing my my work that I sell at conventions and whatnot. I live in Michigan. If you can't tell by my Michigan accent, which I've been told I have. I use a print company in Wisconsin, I think. Oh, is it in Wisconsin? I think it is. Could be wrong, but it's called Print Salon, and it's a small business there. And I have a great relationship with them at Print Salon. They have great like giclée printing and canvas options and all sorts of surfaces. So I don't print my own work, but if you guys have recommendations for printers, I'd love to add that to my studio when I can.
Well, here's an immediate question, a good one.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking while putting those strokes down? What are you after in this stage of the piece?
In this stage of the piece, I'm focused on the red shape, and the red shape is one of the, you know, it's the important silhouette in the piece. So I'm making my way through all those big color blocks. Now, as I'm working my way through those color blocks, there's detail that's not in my sketch. So that's where I'm looking in my reference. And now with a smaller synthetic sable, I'm looking at like a costume, a time period costume, and I'm looking at just generally how the edges of it look. And I'm gonna make some detailed marks with a smaller brush. And I wanna fill in this section of this red cloak, and then I'm going to continue to fill in the rest. But I don't want to miss the details on this edge. And once I know what that pattern is going to be, it'll be easier for me to find it on the other side. So because it's kind of a gold trim, if you have anything that's metallic as a surface, my general rule for like metallic edges, I don't like to paint them just yellow or just green or just silver. I always like to incorporate a little bit of the color that's around them, since they're going to be picking that up. So that's what I'm thinking of. That's why I'm kind of roughing that in with red. I don't mind being a little loose here. And I'm going to kind of make up a little edge pattern. I'm not going to think too much about it because I want this to be loose, but
Do you keep a sketchbook, Audrey?
always. Multiple. Some are a mess, some are super clean. Some are more like diaries with like drawings and like more personal stuff, and some are purely just for figuring out illustration work. Those are the ones that are like, I don't want to say boring, but they're not boring, but they don't have a lot of those like finished, refined things in them. Lots of just process work. So I guess that is pretty cool.
Have you heard of a watercolorist, Edward Reep?
I have to say, not by name, but maybe I've seen the work, but not. But feel free to share links. I love learning new people.
Okay, this is maybe a longer, but do you use any specific reference for your lighting?
For when lighting is the subject, yes. For this one, this piece isn't really too much about the lighting. It's more about the color blocks and the way it's blocked in. So, so for this one, no, it's mostly about like the red, like a flat red, flat black, and like flat tan. So, but yes, if the piece is about lighting, I love to shoot it, or find a picture that I can work from that's close enough.
That was a big day in my life when I figured out that you could make a picture without lighting.
Yeah.
When I discovered that you could do of a picture that's just flat shape, and you can make a picture with a lighting source, and then you can certainly combine the two.
Yeah, I didn't want to think too much about that for this one. I didn't want, because I've done demos before where it's more lighting focused, and that's really fun. But I've done that, and I kind of wanted to try something that was a little bit different, a little looser, and I was focused more on like shape. So for this one, nah, I don't really have a light source, but I do know that technically there is a shadow on the bottom. So there's a top light, but the shadow is pretty much the thing that's indicating that.
So this kind of ties into that. Is Audrey making up these details on the spot, or is she
Yes.
referencing the original drawing?
No, I'm making them up on the fly. So.
There you go.
Yeah, that's why it's fun to doodle. In my classes, I encourage that you try this sketchbook technique where you draw from, well, it's not really a technique, but you draw from life, you doodle, like you can draw from your mind or doodle, and then keep track of stuff you like. So I feel like the doodling kind of pays off. My partner is not an illustrator, but we oftentimes will like fill up doodle pages or like just patterns together. just to like stay fresh and, you know, do some different things. And honestly, the word I'm thinking of is just mark making, you know. So, but I also worked for like doing wedding dresses for a bit last year, and that was pretty intense. And I've drawn a lot of lace in my life, so patterns can be kind of intuitive. But I don't want to get too dark. I think I'm gonna move forward and then come back with ink, because I feel like I want to see the image be a little more resolved before I get too muddled in the details.
Do you have a specific brand of brushes that you prefer?
Let's see, brand. I have like the Princeton brushes. I'm not very like brand specific, but I enjoy those. I have majority of my brushes are synthetic sable. And then I have one real sable.
Okay, so I got a question that reminded me of some other things we talked about earlier, Audrey, and that is kind of your just real basic history. I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions to go back to your childhood. Were you a drawer as a child?
Oh, I love childhood questions. Yes, I drew everything, and I have a very funny story about that. Which I think I was meant to be an illustrator, like just born to be, because there's specific things or ways that I would try to draw or experiment that were like they're just so illustratory. Like, for example, being obsessed with my Xerox scanner that my parents had, and like making copies upon copies of my drawings and sketches as a kid, and then like trying them with different techniques. I'm like, that's what I do now. But I would do that all the time, and I would try coloring them all different kinds of ways. And then I was a drawer, but I also, when I was really young, I thought that I could kind of cheat and draw a very realistic animal by tracing a stuffed animal. I thought for just a moment that if I traced one of my plush animals, that it would look like real, like it would print out a real one. But that's not how it works. It's so funny though, because I have these terrible like drawings that look like I don't know, like a murder scene or something, and then I would just draw eyes on it, and I'm like, no, I guess I got to learn how to draw. Like, it's not going to cut it.
Okay, and
But I was always a drawer. Yeah. Yes.
a couple more questions relate. So, did you study art in high school?
Yeah, I went to a public high school called Stony Creek High School. It's in Michigan, like, and I have a really good art program. I had a teacher, Diane, who really put effort into the program and somehow found a way for me to and all of us to get more involved with art outside of school. They were very involved in the National Scholastic program and stuff like that. So we were always thinking about what was going on, like, you know, in the bigger, broader art world.
And so you went on to art school at Ringling.
Yes.
And I have a very funny, I got to read this to you. This is from Bill Carmen. And he feels the need to criticize young artists who are so good. He's referring to you, Audrey.
Oh, thanks, Bill. I have Bill's art in my kitchen. He's the best.
Audrey, is it a pug? Is it one of his pugs?
No, it's a cool blue cat eating like a robot mouse. And Bill gave that to me at Spectrum one year. And he probably didn't know it, but I was very like stressed out from the attention that year. So that little bit of kindness really helped my social anxiety. Thank you. That's so cool though that he's here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good art here, Audrey.
I'm trying not to think about it.
I'm not trying to intimidate you, but there's a lot of good people here.
Yeah, I'm trying not to think about it and just make art. It's okay.
Okay, so biggest influences and any art book recommendations. There's a lot of questions.
I feel like biggest influences like currently. It's funny. I feel like the artists that I love the most, I just like can't be them. Like no matter how much I try, I just like I'll try to like capture some aspect of what they're doing in a good way. Like if they're really good with like composing, or if they have a really good sense of shape or something, or structure. But I don't know, like Amano is somebody who's always like, I guess like in the recent like 3 years, I've just been kind of obsessed with, but I feel like I can't ever like touch what he does, but I at least try to like incorporate like larger color swatches and like really like not hyper. I used to like hyper focus on like portraits all like specifically, and I'm trying to broaden out to think about like, you know, more like fashion and like larger shapes composing my images, and I love him for that. I love Dave McKean. Again, somebody who like I don't think my art like looks like his, but what I really respect is that he's another one of those in the tribe of like, if you're getting bored with a material, just move to something else that serves the picture. You know, he jumps around to everything, whatever serves the picture, and I really respect that, and I respect his storytelling abilities and his versatility as an artist. I love. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
You're fine. I love Brian and Wendy Froud. I mean, who doesn't? They're amazing. I really like Annie Stegg's work too. I have a lot of hers around my house. I love seeing her process videos too.
Do you care about the outline sketch, or will it disappear?
It'll disappear. As long as the information from it is down, I'm gone. Again, so sometimes pieces are more about the shape, and sometimes they're more about line. This one is going to be shape focused, and line is like the second fiddle. So like there's going to be some things that are linear, but it's, you know, like in the pants, like there's little spaces that I'm leaving, but for the most part, that's one thing I love about watercolor too, is you can really like crisp your shapes. I get really picky when I'm working, especially on something that I know has a lot of potential. And when I get picky, I overwork stuff. So that's why I like watercolor, because although I am into acrylics, I find that I build up these endless layers with my acrylics, and sometimes it can I just never know where to stop. Watercolor, I know when to stop because I've just, you know, I've overworked it, you know. So and the surface is like flat, you know. acrylic, it's like I feel like I've built mountains on pieces before. It's like I would have to get the sandpaper out. I know I'm out of control. Or maybe, you know.
Okay. Is the grip you are using for the watercolor brush the same as you use for drawing? Or is the grip different depending on application of media?
Like how I'm holding it?
I guess.
Wow, I never thought about that. I honestly, truly never thought about that.
But Chuck Todd asked that question.
Oh. Hmm.
You'll have to draw something to answer the question.
Yeah, I think no, I think it's the same because I always do this like weird like clutchy one. I have a very like I don't know if it's good. I've been like you know I've seen art teachers and you know kind of chastise people for clutching their materials, but kind of I don't know. I think it's a control thing, but yeah. I think I do kind of work like that. So I was just thinking that I was going to work around the head, but I realized that I probably want to put a ground in for the face before I do the red, just because it's a lighter area. So I haven't done a lot of like washes, but because the face is lighter, I'm gonna do a wash over this area. It's always easier to do the light areas first, and then go in with the darker around it for watercolor, for at least for my experience. So.
Audrey, are you thinking at all about temperature right now, or mostly value?
Mostly value, but I do know that it's gonna be like it's like a, you know, it's a warm red, so. And I want a little bit. I know there's a hat over the head, so I know there'll be like a little bit of shadow, but I kind of make that up a little bit. I just want the skeleton bit to have a little bit of something on it. And
So did you, there's a question from Laura. I watched the play. Did you pause the YouTube to sketch?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, that works just fine. I love that you can do that with YouTube. I put my YouTube, you know, right on my TV, so.
Do you have an agent for book and editorial work?
I don't. I've always been curious about that though. It might be the right thing to do at some point in the future, so currently no.
Paul Duncan asks, it seems like a lot of professors I've had so far have tried to push me away from pieces being too outline heavy. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I would say the biggest difference is just if it supports the image. So in some of those pictures that I shared of Grau's work that inspired this piece at the beginning, they were very outline heavy, but it was so like important. It was so important to the piece. It was what the piece was all about. Or like Al Hirschfield, you know, we've talked about this in class before, where like if the piece is about line, then you can play up the lines. But if it's not, if the lines don't tell us anything about the piece, then they're just sitting there. So. So the question was that the professor was encouraging someone away from line work, or just thick lines?
I don't know. What do you meant by that? Maybe you can, Paul, you can ask again. Bill Carmen has a question.
Sure.
Do you know James Christensen's work?
That sounds familiar. I think I do. I don't mean to be morbid, but was he your teacher that passed away recently? Or in the last couple of years? I might be remembering someone incorrectly. But I remember someone
Yes.
Yeah, yes then. And in fact, I was at like a thrift store. I don't know if they're like a secondhand store, and there were some amazing prints of his illustrations. I was convincing my my mom to buy for her house because I was like, it was in her city and stuff. And I love his work so much. I really do. I especially love the detail work in the like the fairy tale outfits. They're so outrageous.
I have a question that we were talking about, because I know you were at Ringling. Did you ever go to one of Charles Reed's workshops?
I don't think so. Is
Great,
Charles a professor? Or?
an amazing watercolorist, and he used to do this like special workshop once a year at Ringling. I don't know if he still does.
Yeah,
He was actually from the town I'm from in Connecticut, and a really good artist. My dad had a couple of originals of his in our house, and I think my sisters took his watercolor class when they were teenagers.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. Oh, it was so cool at being in school and just having guest after guest. I didn't realize how lucky I was. I kind of did, but especially so just after the fact. But hey, it kind of feels like that now being with Visual Arts Passage. So it feels like the digital version of that now in my life.
Thanks for saying so.
Yeah, it's been the closest thing to feeling like I'm, back at a like physical art school. Then it feels great. I've been missing that ever since I left, just being around all of these smart people.
Do you have any quotes from past teachers or influences that were very eye-opening to you?
About art, I would assume.
Yeah, be careful.
I was gonna say, like,
yeah, you can't use George.
I never had him as a teacher.
Really?
No.
How did you not do that?
How did I know him?
No, how did you not do that? Or was that?
I just didn't end up in his classes. I mean, I'd watch his demos, but I don't know if George is watching, but I was with my best friend Danielle. We did have a glitter club with his daughter though. So
with Mary?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, we were in glitter club, but
I know you mentioned Don Brandes.
yeah, he was great.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. I don't know about like quotes, but I learned a lot from two painting instructors there that weren't in illustration. I'm not like completely, obviously I'm not completely like self-taught. I wouldn't like say that and, not appreciate teachers I've had, but a lot of things that I have learned, I've taught myself. But the thing that I totally did not teach myself was painting, like with straight up like laying out palettes. There is a guy named Hodges Swallow.
Oh.
And
he's phenomenal.
Yeah. I learned to paint from him. I will say it, like I definitely did. And then there was another teacher named Cheryl Cooper.
Oh, she's good too.
Yeah, and both of them worked in the like same sort of time period in illustration where it was like I don't know, like really, really cool advertisements and really like vivid, interesting palettes. And they taught me to think about painting in ways that I didn't think were painting. And, like they taught me the things that they filled in the information that I didn't know as like a very hungry to learn teenager. I wasn't really getting, obviously from high school, there's only like so much you can learn, but going into college, learning how to start a painting is gold. Knowing how to start, not knowing how to start is usually why people don't start making art. So I learned multiple ways about how to lay out palettes, just about different ways to start from them and different ways to approach, layering. I love assignments that they had, like the all white still life. That one was a great one, and where you have to learn how to see reflected light.
Hodges is a really impressive artist. Good guy too. Nice guy.
I'll always give him credit. He's a patient man. He's got like a really good sense of life too.
Okay. Do you continue to take classes and try to learn painting techniques? Are there any tutorials or online courses you like?
I like Illustration Academy. Right. So I find things all the time. I don't take any classes, but I do. I'm trying to think of like what I do for learning. I don't know. I mean, I don't take any classes right now. If I did, they would be in something other than illustration. That wouldn't, like, I would take a class in like storytelling or something that would help my illustration work, but wouldn't be about it. Or it would be a class that like in sculpting or something aside from that.
Well, interesting that I think most artists, there's a huge part of everybody that's self-taught. I mean, you still have to apply this, whatever you're learning. And it's usually you just get the beginnings of it in school. And then it's kind of up to the individual to take it forward. And everybody is self-taught to a certain extent.
I truly believe that. So this middle part here is going to be interesting. It's one of those, like, little admiral looking outfits. That's what I decided to give them.
In this moment, are you looking at your reference?
Yep. Yeah. This one for the specific kind of jacket. This is. I'm looking at something because I don't have all kinds of fashion memorized. So.
Have you seen the silent film Phantom of the Opera?
Yeah, I love it.
Who hasn't? This is a good question. Could you talk a little bit about how you determine if you will orient a piece toward shape or line?
That's a great question. Sometimes I get stumped up and make the wrong choice. I'll say that. Especially when you have the ability to do both. Well, I will answer that though. I'll say I think about what's important in the piece. To me, like the example of this one, the important part is the color red. The color red, and colors can be shown through shapes, so it's going to be shape. So if it was a piece about, you know, maybe something like, if the piece was about like hair or something that was better shown through maybe line, then I would say, well, okay. I try to think about the subject matter, and try to think, you know, what best suits the subject. But great question. I sometimes find myself, you know, not doing that and then redoing it.
Okay, so do you find your photo reference in general from certain databases, photo sites, etc., or is she occasionally taking her own references?
I good question. I am a big Pinterest fan, especially for like fashion inspiration. You know, I do have quite a few of my own, you know, cloaks and stuff that I've built up over time, and you know, when friends are allowed to come over, or a partner, you know, I will take things, but I mostly gather my stuff and ideas on Pinterest. It's just I love the feature that Pinterest has where it recommends you more ideas after you start gathering up a board. So I think that's just the coolest. It starts to get an idea of what you're trying to do, and then it just recommends more and more. That's probably what I like the most about that.
Here's a tough one.
I actually like tough questions.
Okay, well, I don't know if it is or not. It's probably not. How did you learn to write contracts?
Oh, well, we school. Short answer, we had to learn some of that in school, but also more realistic answer, sometimes you just learn on the job.
Right.
I ask for if I know that a friend has experience working with a certain kind of client, I'll just ask the friend who knows about that kind of work. That's how I learn. I you know, I don't mean to sound like not confident or something, but I'm not afraid to like ask for help on something or see if something sounds right. But I started learning in school, and then as I'm on, you know, as I'm on the job, I live in life. I will run things past people and just kind of check. I have a great there's a great like women's group and on Facebook that also, like, you know, we ask questions, run things by each other, see if things sound right, try to have each other's back.
Community's hugely important for that. Having a group of artists that you're connected to, that especially if they're working in the industry, you can rely on that.
Yeah, and we run things by each other, especially like, you know, trying to make sure that, you know, we're not getting gypped or anything. It's good to have that kind of transparency, but yeah, great. I don't think that's a hard question.
I still get questions from, well, I mean, the questions go back and forth with Sterling and Edward and students from the past, and point people to In fact, just recently, Edward asked a question about his Time magazine, that insert that he did, that cover series.
Yeah.
And I made the suggestion, ask this person. And they were probably more helpful to him than I was.
When in doubt, ask somebody who has done the closest thing to what you're doing. So I'm gonna check the time.
Yeah, I remember I was kind of waiting until you got to a point you could stop, because we were going to take like a 3 to 5 minute break. But you tell us when to do that. That can be whenever you want to do it.
What are we doing on the break?
I'm probably getting another drink.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what kind of break we were talking about. Okay. I would love to get something too. But how about I finish like the red part, or like get the
do it whenever Audrey, do it whenever you want. It's you're driving, you're in control.
Oh my God, this is so exciting. I'm also not used to having this long of demos because, gotta teach the lesson, do the critiques, and, I just don't really get the time to do that because,
Oh, I understand.
I recently decided that the way I was going to do my 2 classes was to do similar demos that show different concepts and then get like part of them done in each class. So and then it would be like a 2-day. We'll pick up where we left off. So you could see a little bit more. And I was like, okay, finally figured that out. If it was going to be something more extensive. Okay. I thought that was a drip down there, but actually just a shoe. So I didn't get into the, I don't know if I'm gonna get into the face yet, but I'm gonna get in with my smaller brush. So my initial shape treatment is just, I'm thinking about like the silhouette. So that's my first thought. My second thought, I'm a bit more crisp, and I say like, what's the importance of line in painting? For me in watercolor, the way I put in my second layers is actually kind of linear. I think about kind of blocking in chunks, but I'm not trying to be too precious on this one, but I'm always just a little precious around like facial areas. I don't want to gunk that up.
This one's a simple one for you. And using the tissue are you using the tissue to remove water from the paper or remove a bit of color?
A little bit of both. I'm just dabbing. Yeah, I just sometimes I forget I even do that, but sometimes I'll record myself working and I notice, I don't even notice that I do that. It's so funny. But yeah, it's just, if anything doesn't quite feel right, and it kind of blends a little bit too. It picks up a little pigment.
When starting out, did you ever have trouble advocating for yourself, like with telling clients how much you want to be paid or negotiating the terms of a job?
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel like negotiating. I guess I'm just being honest here. Sometimes I feel like myself and all artists have struggles at first and just different times in life with just valuing your work. I've gotten better with that. You know, you have to send that email and say, you know, this is my budget. Recently, this year, I won't like name any names whatsoever. There was somebody who offered me a really kind of exciting opportunity, and I was, you know, there was somewhat of like a larger name attached to it, and I was like, oh gosh, like that's cool. And then I saw their budget, and I was like, so like, you know, you want what for this? And I was a little confused, but sometimes when there's like a star power project, they think that they can kind of, you know, buy your time with the razzle dazzle of their name. It's sometimes it is cool, and maybe you just want to, and if you can afford to, but I really had to put my confidence pants on and send that email and try to explain, like, based on like the art that they included from my portfolio, like if they wanted me to do that, I did have to kind of stand up for myself there, and they ghosted. So after that, so it, you know, it happens, but if it, you know, wasn't meant to be. So sometimes it is tricky, but I don't know. I've mentioned it before, I think when I was at CCS doing a lecture, but the thing that like gives me like a sense of pride or identity as an illustrator or artist is making art. Like my relationship with art, that's it, you know, like me making stuff. If as long as I can still make things, like I, you know, if that happened, it didn't work out, like that's not part of, you know, my identity. Like that just happened, you know, and it's not personal. So I'm okay. Life goes on. But I think it's harder at times where you might, you know, you're harder on money or things, and you might be more willing to compromise your time, or, you know, feeling more under pressure. But yeah, good question. I don't want to like ramble too much about it, but
Okay. Did most clients come to you in the beginning of your career, or did you reach out uh, more for projects?
I'm gonna sound really lucky, but it's the first option. And but I have to give myself a little bit of credit because I started using social media when I was younger, and when I'm younger, I mean like young high school, when my work wasn't specifically like being put out there to, you know, to get jobs per se. I just really loved social networking. So, so like in as I got better and I used social media as a form of like digital progress and just connecting with people online. By the time I was in school looking for work, each time I used Tumblr mostly and Blogspot when that was popular, but each time I would ping something on Tumblr or Blogspot, like, you know, it seemed like it was getting a pretty good reach. By the time I was in college, like I was so thankful, like, you know, like Spectrum and stuff they would repost things, and luckily that is what put some of my stuff in front of people's eyes, and that was enough to help get me started. So I had no idea. I started off just as a curious kid, wanting to find other people who cared enough about art. So, and then another way to get work, again, community, just talk to people. Literally, like almost every really good thing that's happened for me work-wise has been because somebody spoke up for me or somebody passed something my way. Friend, colleague, someone from school. Yeah, I mean, when I worked for Hasbro, it was quite frankly, it was just somebody I went to school with. They thought I was a good fit for the job. They thought my technique and style was exactly what the project needed. So so be nice to people, and think about others when. So but sometimes I reach out. Like I'll reach out to people. But I've been lucky, and I try to return the favor, of course, whenever I can.
Okay, first question, really simple, and it's here, so I'm going to ask it. Pan or tube watercolor?
Tube.
And then next question, can you explain a bit on your ideation process when coming up with one of your narrative pieces? The spectrum image you did for Tour, for example.
Oh, that's great. I love talking about that. Yay. Oh, this will be a challenging move to see if I can talk about that stuff while I'm arting. So usually if there is a story involved, and anybody who's in here from my class will know this because I talk about this in class. If there's a story involved, I have to really focus on the words and the text and not distract myself. So I print out the story, if I have a printer. But I used to be able to go to this cool thing called the library, which I miss. And I print it out and I highlight words and phrases, and then I make like a phrase book and and I like highlight usually with different color, like things that would be fun to draw, or like sentences that like emote like the full thing of the story. And then I make my thumbnails. I try to narrow down like 3 main ideas from those notes, and then I thumbnail and explore based on those ideas. But I love narrative stuff. I love anything that gives me I don't like open-endedness, which seems like the opposite of what you would think for an artist, but I in fact dread open-endedness. So I love having a specific prompt or like something that you are trying to capture. So again, just like illustrating anything, I like to think, what is the point of the thing that I just read too? Like, what is the main takeaway? And that's really good. I mean, because that draws back to, you know, school reading comprehension. You know, what was the whole point of the story? You know, what are the big moods and the big takeaways from this? You have to learn how to be a reader, and you have to learn how to be a listener too. Being like a conversationalist and a good ear to your friends or people in your life, that's also a really great way to learn how to dissect stories and come up with images from them. You know, put it into play in your life. So might have gotten off track a little bit, but yeah, that's essentially what I do. Wordless notes, trying to make it a little bit easier for myself.
All the stuff that Edward teaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, did I just do a promotion for a class on accident?
Thank you.
No, but but the thing is, I really care about being genuine, walk the talk sort of, and it's really cool that I don't have to think about that when I'm doing work here, because the things that I would naturally say are the things that like John probably wants me to say, so I don't have to think too hard about it. You know, which is nice. It just means that everything is natural and it just, you know, makes sense. But yeah.
Okay, so what's been one of the main experiences / influences, developments that helped you build your confidence in your own art? How do you deal with comparing your work against others?
I weirdly don't often have that problem because I live in my head so much, which is weird. But could you repeat that question? Because it's a really good one and I have so many things to say about it.
What's been one of the main experiences / influences / developments that helped you develop your confidence in your own art? How do you deal with comparing your work against others?
Yeah, okay. So confidence in my own art. Well, first off, like I always have been kind of hard on myself, but the person that I compare myself to the most is me and my own standards. So I'm my biggest critic. I'm the person that I compare myself to. I compare myself to my best days. So I compare myself to like my taste. And we were just looking at this this little graph that we can't remember who drew, but it's like it's basically a graph showing, or you said maybe it was Sterling, but it was essentially a graph that showed like your taste being really good, but your skills not matching up with it. And like the space in between that is like the pain that you feel. And that's like where most of my struggle has been, where it's just like, I know I can make art that's this good. My biggest challenges have not been comparing myself to others as much as having no, I don't want to get too much into it, but just like mental health things getting in the way, or you know, just working with, you know, living with ADD or just distraction and you know, that kind of thing, just not being able to focus. I don't, as far as comparing myself to others, I'm just like happy when people make art. I'm happy when people make good art. I don't look at artists and say like, you know, wow, I suck. I just go, wow, I'm just so happy you made something. That's awesome. But I think a way to also think about that is they may have tried this, but I didn't try it yet. You know, so that's one thing you get from like teaching too, is if you've ever taught like you could tell, you know, the students to all draw the same thing. Okay, everybody's going to draw this skull today. Every single person's is going to look different. So I kind of think about life like that, where like, if everyone in the world has drawn all the best art ever, but like, I don't know, like, I didn't get to do it yet. So like the thing that I just willed into existence didn't exist before. So that's cool and just deserves to be appreciated for what it is. I guess that's probably a good attitude to have, which I try to keep. My criticisms go, yeah, they're more about the other stuff I was talking about, like where, you know, it's like it's more like I'm not doing enough, or I should be, you know, working more efficiently. Or, you know, why can't you work on this book that you've had this idea kicking around for a while? But and I've also learned a lot from, there were like 2.5, 3 years that I worked in art therapy. And it's just the objectives are completely different. And you just think about creating and confidence in a totally different way. So
Well,
all my experiences.
that's a really good answer, Audrey. You know, everybody has their own. Everybody's in their own place and their own situation. You know, I certainly had my challenges and still do,
Yeah.
about development. I mean, you know, my the closest artist to me was my father, and he was really good. And it's like trying to compare yourself to that all the time. I figured out pretty early on that was kind of useless.
Right. Yeah, it's not a really good barometer for like measuring your growth.
No.
He's him and you're you.
And the thing that I kept always going back to is, no matter who it is or what it is, you still got to go through it yourself. I mean, nothing just happens without you not going through the process of learning and developing yourself. Everybody has different things to deal with.
Mm-hmm. And also, why are you making art? Are you making art because you want to be the very best? Or are you making art because you want to be making images? If you want to be the best at something, maybe you're in it for the wrong reason. Maybe you should be playing a sport, you know? Like, there is no best in art. There's like your best, and there's good stuff. There's good stuff, but, you know, think about why you're in it.
Yeah. Oh, I think there's people that are definitely competitive about it, but the people that I think that are the artists that I've seen are the most mature in their work. They're also the biggest appreciators of other artists I've ever
Sure.
and it's, the more you learn, the better you get, the more appreciative you are and respectful you are to other people's talents.
Yes, and I love the Instagram stories has essentially become the ultimate like artist share platform. Instantly, every day, bam, bam, bam. You know, people just sharing their favorites, giving attention. Like sometimes that can be just as fun for me as, you know, making something. You know, comparison kills you. I'm happy to be alive, so I try to cut that out as much as I can.
Do you have any particular YouTube artists or podcasts that you enjoy listening to while working?
Just music count. I'm very into listening to Chopin right now. I love classical music. So I mostly listen to like pagan folk music or classical music. Chopin right now. As far as podcasts, sometimes like talking, I don't know, talking kind of bothers me while I'm working. I mean, I just listen to audiobooks, but you know, I used to listen to the radio when it wasn't depressing. But I live close enough to Canada to get CBC Radio 1 in, and they always have like really interesting like podcasts that run about all different kinds of subjects all the time. So I still listen to that. There's a podcast on CBC Radio 1 called Ideas, and I absolutely love that. I love learning about like philosophy, and I love learning about like sometimes weirdly enough like economics, and I guess that's not weird, that's kind of cool, but like they bring up a variety of, you know, like ideas and theories and stuff, and I'm a big ideas person. They talk about all sorts of stuff, and then audiobooks. I'm, yeah, that is a, and also I am a Broadway musical fan, so so I do like to listen to some shows, and my favorite right now is Hadestown. If there's any other musical listeners out there.
Okay.
So.
Do you have any major influences regarding other artists? Who does she rate?
Who does she rate? I think I talked about that a little bit. I can just keep on naming artists I like for different reasons. Lori Lee Brahm is a great painter. I have some of her prints here. She has a great sensitivity. I have different like categories, like who I like for drawing, who I like for painting. Trying to think. I know I've mentioned a couple, but I'm trying to think of who I didn't. I can look at my shelf. I'm looking at my bookshelf now. There were different artists that inspired me at different times for reasons. I don't know. Does anybody? I don't just look at illustrations, so that's why it's hard. I don't know if you guys want to hear like illustrators that I like or just artists, because I love dimensional stuff. And there's this artist, and I think she's in LA, named Elizabeth Mcgrath, and she was one of the first people that made me want to do art. Elizabeth Mcgrath, she's an amazing like surreal sculpture artist and painter, but she does like I love dioramas. I love like dimensional art, like puppets and stuff, and her stuff's really cool. And then who else like in that kind of world do I like to? Oh yeah, I really like pop surrealism. I mean, Mark Ryden is also like one of my first influences. Again, somebody who like I don't think you can't really touch that, you know. Can't really. He's just in a category of his own as far as being a person. But I love pop surrealists like Mab Graves and yeah, and like Mark. And I love, you know, there's like a whole, you know, group of people in the world that kind of have a way of stylizing faces and have similar subject matter, and I love that stuff. So I'm trying to think like what I want to go into next, just based on the time. Going to the stairs.
Okay, do you want to take that break or?
Oh yes, please.
Okay, let's take a three. I don't know how much time do you need?
3 minutes is fine. I when I get into a painting, all I want to do is paint. So it feels weird. Break. Thank you for
take as long as you need, and then we'll just start when you get back.
Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that.
Okay, right. We'll see everybody back here in just a few minutes.
I'm gonna change out my watercolor water and I'll be right back. All right, John, are you here?
I am here.
All right. I think I am good to go.
Okay.
Thanks for the break though. I got this is my favorite mug. It's a Condor mug. Someone, I can't remember the person who makes it. It's at the Michigan Renaissance Festival. So cool. I love little handmade things in my life.
Okay.
All right.
We have a question from Kate Merrick. Do you
Yes.
have, you know,
Kate,
Kate, do you have anything that you do to help you focus on your work, to not get distracted or procrastinate?
yeah, it's exactly what we were just talking about on Facebook. That's exercise. Yeah. I run and work out from home right now, and it calms my brain and it gets it in a good place. It's not a cure-all, but that helps a lot. Physical activity, and then things that are beyond physical activity. There's a couple different techniques, and I think I got this one from Bobby Chu, but it's the 90-minute focus thing where you set an alarm for an hour and a half. Don't do anything else, just work for that time, and then take 15 minutes. Take a break for 15 minutes, and then go back to 90. There's all sorts of little, like, techniques like that, but yeah, for me, it's gotta make sure I just have some physical activity, and it makes me, that feeling like when you sit into like a squishy armchair and it just kind of envelops you. To me, that kind of feeling makes me want to focus on art. I love that, where I just feel grounded and ready to go. If I feel kind of like this nervous energy and I just want to be checking everything, yeah. Oh, and turn off apps, close out of them. So that never helps. Have those running. So yep.
The thing about, I think that we were talking about this before we started, about running,
Yeah.
working out, anything like that. The most important part of it to me is not bringing my phone.
Yep.
Oh, it's such a nice thing to just, like, I'm away from that. Not that I could run with my phone in the first place, but like going on walks and having my phone with me is about half as effective.
Yeah, I do use my phone for my run, but I just don't have it turned on. I just use it for music. But yeah, that's what I've been trying to do to focus. I don't think I'll ever be able to completely solve that mystery, and I think it'll be a lifelong challenge to work with. But it's okay. It's part of my process. It's part of my story. So, and sometimes, if anybody else deals with like procrastination and things like that, I'm not to, like, I know it's obviously those kinds of things are hard, but I did read that there's something about procrastinating, that the thought process is you're trying to be efficient, by only giving yourself the exact amount of time you need to do something, but that time just leads into exactly when it's due. It's so funny that those two are linked. But after I thought about that, I was like, oh, that is kind of funny. Like, am I a master procrastinator, or am I just very efficient?
You know, it's funny. George Pratt is the king of that. He'll procrastinate, put stuff, you know, it seems like he's putting stuff off, and then he just like explodes. I mean, he just goes into these,
Do or die mode.
it's unbelievable.
I think sometimes we get addicted to that, and that's exactly what it is.
Well, I think he does things when he wants to. I mean, it's like when he really, really feels like it. I think pressure is part of it, but I told this story. I won't get into the long version of this, but a couple of years ago at the Academy, he had this piece that he called me before he came down. He said, I need to borrow your studio the first couple of days because I got to get this piece done for a comic festival. I don't know. It was in Europe somewhere. And it took like for 3 weeks, he kept telling me every time he stayed at my house during the whole program. Every day he'd say, oh, I got to work on that piece. I got to work on that piece. Finally, the client just said, we have to have it this particular day. And after he'd procrastinated he spent so much time putting it off, he did the piece. It probably took him an hour. I mean, it was amazingly how fast he went through this piece, and it was stunningly beautiful. And it was like, could you have not done that 3 weeks ago? And he honestly looked at me and he goes, probably not. It was so perfect. He goes, I don't think I could have.
Yeah, but listen to all these stories about like how other people also deal with this. Like you're definitely not alone, and it's a human brain thing, you know. Like it's
okay. And then somebody asked the question, James Gurney ? So
the best. What about him?
great.
Great. James Gurney is great.
Yep. Very nice man, very good artist, very bright guy.
Yes. James Gurney, great. Love that. I don't think I've ever met him. Maybe I've seen him at an event, but never like went up to him. But trying to think. Oh yeah, there was one time that my partner was on YouTube and he just stumbled across like one of Gurney's painting videos at I think he was like at an airport, and he was doing like a plein air based on the airplane or the scene outside while he was waiting. And Shane just like shared it with me. He's like, oh, I was watching this random guy painting, and he was like on YouTube, and it actually turned out pretty good. And he sent it to me, and I was like, this random guy painting. Not this is the guy.
He's funny.
Like, you're watching good stuff.
I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. I walked into Spectrum, into where everybody was staying at the hotel, and I was there to meet Arnie and Kathy Finner. And James Gurney was sitting with them, and I had brought my dad to join us, and he was, he was 83 or 84 at the time, so I wanted to make sure I was with him when he walked in, just to make sure he got there okay. And he sat down, and James did a painting of him. Oh. It was so cool. I mean, it was like, I have a picture of James Gurney painting a picture of my father. It was so stinking cool. And did this beautiful little painting. It was something I'll always treasure, watching that happen.
Did he give the painting to you?
No, but that's okay. He might have given it to my dad. I don't know. But I think it was permanently in his sketchbook.
Oh, yeah, that always is. It's always the worst when you draw something nice on the back of something that's also very nice.
I don't think he wanted to give me a sketchbook. And I certainly wasn't going to ask him for it. The other thing is, do you know who um, Justin Coral Kaufman is? Coral.
I did. I met him once at a workshop in LA when I don't know.
One of the concept art.
Yeah.
Yeah. He one evening he invited a whole bunch of people. We went to dinner and invited a bunch of people back to his house. He had all these videos. It was the first time I was ever really aware of James besides his books. Gurney. He showed me a video of Gurney. I became a fan of him at that point because he showed me a video of him painting while riding a unicycle. And he had a whole little paint set up, and he was actually like riding it on like a off-road, like on a bike trail. And he was bouncing all over the place. It was hysterically funny.
I love it. Work it into your life.
Okay, so are the pages of your sequential you showed at the end of your presentation part of a published book?
That one was a school publication, but not beyond that. No.
Could you talk a bit more about planning for this sequence?
Oh wow, I have to think back, but as far as you can just ask a couple. Story or process?
It just says planning for the sequence.
Oh, well, I mean,
maybe they'll respond. Christian,
okay.
Christian McKenzie, could you type in the Q&A? Do you want?
I mean, I can kind of guess what people mean. Well, it was based on. I mean, I do.
It said the story. Yeah.
Huh?
The story.
Oh, okay. Well, I do. Like a lot of people do. I meditate and stuff, and a lot of my stuff is based on like visual, like my dreams, or ways that I cope with things in life, or ways that I want to try to help others cope with things. So, yeah. So, I mean, I usually start based on that. I don't necessarily like prescribe to like, dreams or symbols like mean any specific thing in my art, but that's usually where I start. I know when I tell stories, maybe it's just like the optimist in me, or like the person who wants to like give the narrative hope. I do love I hear like a heroine in a story, or a hero who is more of like a psychological warrior. I love helping sort through psychological conflict, either trauma or things that are real, but I love showing them and explaining them using more fantastical symbols or imagery. I always love when I tell a story or an image to give somebody a way out too. I love ending on a note of hope too. So at the end of that piece, it was like really important that the girl in the story was like smiling at the end when she was split in half. So it's not the end. Oh, I don't know how much to talk about that one, but everyone has a specific like area that they lean to the way they like to tell stories. But I like telling stories that have some sort of theme of healing or uh, self-understanding or understanding others. So it's a little about me. But I also just like being goofy. I love just pure humor too. So I'm not too heavy all the time.
Okay, this is a interesting question. I've heard some artists say they don't need to study anatomy because they take good reference. How much did the study of anatomy play in your work?
That's a great question. I love telling these stories while I work, but I have to keep an eye on the time too, because we're done at 6, or my time, right?
Right. Well, we can
Okay.
go a little bit longer if you need to.
Okay. Well, I just these steps in the picture usually what takes longer, and then when I come in with ink, it usually works a bit faster. But so anatomy, I started my anatomy journey like, I want to say I took like a class when I was a freshman in high school. Like they offered it. They were like somewhere else. They were like, you know, you learn how to draw the skull, and we actually learned from like a teacher who like specialized in that, and it was something that you could learn. So I didn't it was really helpful to think about that kind of stuff, and it was like a good challenge for a younger person who was wanting to learn a little bit more at that age, but I didn't really know how to apply it to my drawings. So when I was, you know, learning to draw more, I would just try to think about how things, you know, if it could work underneath what I was drawing. You know, they often recommend that teacher and other people in that time in my learning, they recommended taking like a cartoon character and trying to find their skeletal system, you know, trying to, you know, figure out the structure, and that was kind of fun. So it started there, but I didn't really, I mean, I think of things as there's like the practicality side of anatomy, and then there's like the aesthetic. By the time I got to Ringling mostly focused on the aesthetics of anatomy. They didn't teach an anatomy course. So, but because I had that experience when I was a little younger, and I'd been thinking about that, and how to like warp, you know, any kind of character can have structure, have some kind of anatomy. So I think about that in my characters too. Even if they had long necks and gangly arms and weird shapes, there was some kind of sense of like anatomy to them. So, yeah, but the way I learned at Ringling was more about like technique and what things looked like on the surface. So that really helped me. Relying on pictures though. I mean, it comes down to this. If you learn from copying pictures only, then you're going to be a good copier. If you learn how things work, you can invent your own ideas and things. And that's just the difference between knowing how to copy something and learning how something works. So both are good, both can work together. But if you only ever learn, you know, that way, I feel like it can sometimes create, I don't know, blind spots for you. But reference is good. I'll knock reference.
I know lots of great artists that used reference all the time, still use reference all the time.
Reference is great.
Yeah. You can't, it's really interesting. Like somebody trying to use an opaque projector to try to project a piece of reference onto your canvas or your substrate. If you can't draw, you can't do that very well. It just doesn't work.
It's all kind of connected.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's observation. You know, well, you know, George Pratt said it in his presentation. He never studied anatomy. He's just totally observational drawer. But
Oh, that's what you mean. Okay, okay, like the actual studying. Yeah.
yeah, and you know, hasn't, you know, I don't, you know, my dad was a great drawer and drew the figure his whole life, and he never studied anatomy either. He just did it observationally. And I think good people that get good at observational drawing, they start to see things in a construction way also.
Okay.
They start to construct.
Yeah, I agree there. I thought you meant like if you were only just like looking at photos and doing them exactly.
I'm not sure what they meant by it, but
Oh, okay. Because I was like, well, you should definitely think about how stuff works, but
right.
you do that observationally for sure.
Right.
Anatomy helped a little bit. Anatomy really helped me with portraiture though, because it just made me draw a lot of it.
Right.
Just repetition helps.
Well, you know, most information is good. You know, it's like
Getting information.
Yeah,
Good.
it's a good thing.
Experience. Good.
Yeah, drawing from memory is, you know, I truly believe it's when you're the most creative, and if you're drawing from memory, you have to rely on yourself, and it certainly helps with your personal development because you only have you to rely on. I think it's a big part of it.
So I'm making my way up the stairs now in my piece, and the this piece is not going to have like too much detail in the stairs, so I'm mostly just defining them as wet on wet shapes. And then after I'm done, I'm going to toss a little bit of just color, going to be under where the chandelier is, and then I'm going to go in with ink. So
if you could illustrate any book, which one would it be?
oh, that's the hard question. I feel like the last time I did, someone asked me that. It's like you want to say your favorite, but then you have that moment where you're like, it's so much pressure to illustrate your favorite thing. Like illustrate a cover for it, or like what kind? I guess it doesn't matter. Trying to think. It's like my first reaction is always like, oh, it would be cool to do something with Harry Potter because that's always such a, such a thing that was formative for me and inspiring. But that's the one where I'm always like, maybe I don't want to touch that. Maybe some kind of classic would be cool. A book. I'm not sure. I do think that it would be really fun. It'd be cool to get a gig one day with the Folio Society. I do like those kinds of illustrated books that are thought out about with the layout and the printing presentation as well. I'm not sure about that. I don't know if I have an answer to that question. Yeah.
This is kind of a follow-up. Do you like any illustrators that aren't too academically skilled in their techniques or anatomy? Composition, etc., has to be perfect.
Well, first comes to my mind Ralph Steadman, of course.
I like tons of them that aren't.
Yeah, I love I love that punk rock attitude about making art. So the answer is yes. Um, he was the first one that came to mind. But in general, no, I definitely appreciate artists that are not as planned. I like it when people can just pick up a pencil, like, you know, and like will a thing to life. I have my friend Iris compete, like she does like planned out illustration work, but I've also seen her just draw her creatures and fairies from her mind, because she does have such, she puts in the time. That's why she's good. Like she makes it a thing. But she works for it. But I love that her creatures just she doesn't plan them too much. She just can just draw them, sketch them, and they're there.
Back to, I'd rather look at an interesting drawing rather than an accurate drawing.
Yeah. I really like, I think the era in art is, what do they call that? Like a post-war modernism in England. Like Francis Bacon and gosh, there was who was the landscape painter? Let me just refresh myself for a quick moment. Thomas Nash, right?
Well, there's yeah.
Or no, not Thomas Nash. Who's Nash that I'm thinking of? No. Gosh.
Someone said Paul Nash.
Paul Nash.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's the one I'm thinking of.
Thomas Nash is an illustrator.
Okay, well, yes, I'm thinking of Paul Nash. Yeah, like those landscapes that almost look figurative and grotesque. I think that's so cool. I love that area, or that era in painters, because it's so emotive and just different.
Yeah, it's kind of probably my favorite group of painters, abstract expressionists, Richard Diebenkorn, or a whole group of California colorists, Selden Guile, a bunch of great painters. Joan and Theopolis Brown.
Nathan Oliveira.
Yeah, that's whose name I was trying to think.
Nathan Oliveira, Paul Warner. I could hear you like you're blanking on it. I understand.
Yeah.
Nathan Oliveira would be right at the top of the list there with Stephen.
Yeah. Do you know Manuel Neri's sculptures?
Oh God, yeah.
Painted sculptures. Yeah, those are amazing as well. And
the Bay Area figurative painters. I love those guys.
Yeah. David Park.
Yep.
As well.
Joan Brown, Theopolis.
Yeah.
Also, just what I'm doing right now, I'm just lifting up some extra pencil with my eraser just to clean up for a moment. Going back in.
I think Dave McKean did a book about Paul Nash, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, the Black Dog and Dreams of Paul Nash.
Yeah.
It's great. It was like the Black Dog was like his depression, and like it was like an interesting psychological work through stuff. All right, I'm gonna get in here with the details now.
That's looking really fantastic, by the way.
Oh, thank you. It's always fun when you start adding in those like super dark, so you can
Yeah.
start really coming together.
Is there any way to see your palette?
Not really.
Yeah, don't mess with it.
I'm really kind of tight in here.
It's okay. That was a student asked. I just
Oh.
no big deal.
I'm gonna paint a little bit over the edges, as you guys can see. I'm extending out the edges of the red, so I can ink over it, and there's not going to be like a super blank space. And then, yes, while I let that dry, I'm gonna be bold. I'm gonna come in here. All right. This stuff this is always very you know, a little bit nerve-wracking to do after, you know, painting can move a little bit slower, but you gotta loosen up when you're inking with a brush pen. I could very well come in here and do this with watercolor, but I don't want to. I want to do it with ink.
Is that a permanent ink or is it a water-based ink in there?
Oh, it's a permanent, so that if I do want to go over it, I won't have any major problems. But I really don't like filling in like large dark spaces with this, especially like on a bigger piece like this. So I'm gonna have to fill in with something else, but I might be out of my my black ink wash, so I might just use black gesso. But black gesso is really cool to work with because you can actually draw with colored pencil on top of it.
It has enough tooth to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
What would be a good example of a psychological hero? Any favorites?
A psychological hero. Yeah, it should be like that concept, or like in a book or something. I mean
I'm just reading.
concept. Okay. Yeah, because I know I did say that, but I mean, psychological heroes are like, I mean, for me, it's like, you know, just anybody who's fighting with something that's not, you know, it's part of your mind, you know. So I guess that's what I meant by it, but I'm like, I guess that could be anybody. Psychological heroes, yeah. Did I just make that up? I have to think before I, you know, say anything thoughtful about that, because I do care.
Well, don't think and draw. You got ink in your hand.
What?
You have ink in your hand. Careful.
Oh!
You should always be thinking when you're drawing, but thinking about what you're drawing.
It's funny, when I ink, I do not like to stay in one area at all. I don't know if anybody else also is in that club, but I do not like to stay in one area. I like to bounce around.
Dale Stefanos asks, how many hours will a piece like this take to complete?
Well, I mean, how long have we been working here?
You've been working just about 2 hours.
Oh, okay. Huh. Well, then maybe like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4. It's hard to, it's, I think, again, I time myself to an extent, but it's hard to say because I don't have a formula for making art, you know. If I see an opportunity for something, you know, I might spend a little bit longer on that. Oh, and I really enjoyed Dale's talk last, I think it was last semester, right?
Yep.
That was really delightful.
He's pretty good.
I know. It was.
I want to see him fail on Sunday or Saturday, though.
Oh, really?
It's his turn to fail.
That's the feeling competition. I heard of.
We were doing our weekly or our daily exercises, and we thought it would be I thought it'd be healthy for me to like just try something I've never done before and fail in front of the students, and I certainly did that. And it's Dale's turn on Saturday.
And you really try it on purpose? That's so cool.
Well, I mean, you just try some. No, you definitely don't. I wasn't trying to fail.
Oh.
I was just using materials that were really difficult and I've never tried before. And
Like,
there's actually a part that I like a lot, but it's still the first time out. You know, you can. That's the whole point. Put yourself in an uncomfortable position, uncomfortable spot. Dale said there will be a large bonfire with me in the middle of my demo.
Summer fun.
Do you prefer brush pens over brushes? Why? Thank you.
Less dipping. Oh, like why do I? Yeah. The only I want to use black ink right now, but I only have brown, so I have like a black. And yeah, I guess, you know, less dipping. But I like both. I just really like this pen in particular, so. But while I'm doing that, just because I want to like cover a bit more, I'm just gonna use some black gesso for an area. Oh, I'm just waiting for some things to dry a bit. So with gesso, I would use a brush. So.
Chris Perry says, I tell my students that I want to see them fail because it means you're trying something new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like succeeding sometimes though.
Well, I said that, I don't know when I said this recently, but it was something that was pointed out to me when I was just starting to be an artist. And I was told that you're going to have to learn about failure. and you know, it was a funny thing. I didn't quite understand what they meant. And it further explained to me, it's like artists, even really successful artists, fail more than they succeed. And, you know, not every artist gets every project. Not every artist, every time you sit down to make a picture, you should be willing to fail, and failing is healthy. But, even on a successful piece, you may have gone through ups and downs of it, being excited about it or disliking it in the process. But learning to deal with that, it can be tough.
Especially depending on how much is riding on it.
What kind of an easel are you working on?
Just a very simple one. It's just like something that I got in college, like from Blick, like a Blick by Jillian. Just a regular easel. Don't have anything too fancy, but it's good enough for these web setups.
Oh, Audrey, could you recenter your camera?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I was reading questions. I didn't even, sorry.
I must have knocked it when I stood up. I probably should have picked a smaller piece of paper for a demo, but
That's all right. So I'm reading a chain of things in the chat. There's a brush pen with sable hair from Cure Take. It's quite responsive. The closest to sable brushes I have tried.
Oh, that's great. I'll have to
take number 40 fountain hairbrush pen.
That's awesome. I'll check that out. Somebody link.
Is that black gesso that you're using?
Yeah.
I was asking you.
Yeah. I'm kind of creating like a reverse line here. My goal for before we go is to get like all of the main values and stuff down. But my bad for picking something so big or big for a demo. I will certainly finish it. Feel a little bad about that, but I think this part moves quicker, so at least there's that.
Daniel apologizes for having to step out and then come back, but he's asking why black gesso instead of acrylic or watercolor?
Because I can work on top of it if I want to with another medium. And also it's extremely opaque. So with watercolor, I would have to keep layering and layering and layering it up. Sometimes I want to do that, but I really want to get something done while you all are watching, and it kind of works like ink. So I like that aspect of it.
My experience with white gesso is it always dries with a matte finish. Are you going to hit the gesso area with a Liquitex gloss finish?
No, I like it matte. But that's an interesting thing to try. My taste is definitely more matte, I'd say. I don't mind things being that way.
Do you usually stretch your watercolor paper? I have to stretch, whoops, it just moved. I have to stretch mine for a class I'm in. And I keep having problems with the gummed tape bubbling up.
Oh, I guess I don't really stretch mine, but if it got a little rumpled at the end, you can put some water on the back of the paper and then like kind of re-wet it and then press it under something while it dries. But I've never, but I also really like, for the reason of no warping, I love 300-pound watercolor paper for like my smaller pieces, just because there's absolutely like zero warp.
Do you get it in a block, or do you get the individual paper?
I get the individual paper, but I was lucky enough that like I was gifted some that I've been using for a while. That's why I use it in smaller sizes.
And somebody said use wood glue water mix to wet it.
Oh, for the back?
Evidently, I guess.
Cool.
We'll keep it from warping.
Hey, I'm always game to learn a new technique.
No, for the tape. That makes more sense.
Okay, I was gonna be like, I'm not gonna knock it. I certainly haven't tried it, but sounds weird.
That's fine.
Thanks all for the great questions. I know time is running towards the end of when we said, but I mean I'd be willing to stay for a bit after if you wanted.
Well, let's stay for another 15 minutes or so and see what happens.
Okay. Yeah, this part does for me move a bit quicker. I do want to get our skull in there too, but I guess I'm sort of saving that for later.
Steve Hughes says this is looking great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's
Steve, you're in Michigan, right? Somewhere north up there. Marquette.
oh nice. So at Northern Michigan University, you probably know her, but do you know Christine Poole?
Yes. Yes, I
Oh.
don't know her, but I know who I certainly know who it is.
Oh, she's a friend of mine, and she studied sculpture at Northern in Marquette. So small world.
Spectrum fame.
Yeah.
Steve Hughes went to the Illustration Academy, I'm guessing like 2002 or 2003.
Oh. Like last year.
2003. Hey, good guess. 2003 and 2004.
How long has the Illustration Academy been going?
And 2017, excuse me. I knew that when you came back to visit. since 1995.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome. Steve, I remember a couple pieces Steve did when he was in school with us, or in class with us. And Behind Blue Eyes, Gary Kelly assignment, was unbelievably good.
That was the title of the prompt.
Yeah. Well, that was the color blue was the assignment.
Oh, that's been going around since the 90s.
It was a Gary Kelly assignment. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Well, that one, I think it was the first year we gave it. It was in 2003. And Steve's was wonderful. Okay, so somebody is saying they missed what type of paper it was.
This one in particular?
Yeah.
It was, let me just look at it again. I think it was 140-pound cold press arches. And I'm being pretty gestural for this part up here because it's just how I want it to be. Sometimes I'm super detailed with things, but sometimes it's fun to just leave things to gesture.
Okay. Chris Pavin, I got to get going, but thank you so much. Audrey was absolutely amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Do you usually digitally enhance?
Yeah, for photo editing, a little bit. I do adjustments. If it's supposed to be a digitally, like, if digital was like part of the materials that I'm using, then yeah, of course. But I tweak things a little bit, but I try. I mean, if the piece is supposed to be traditional, if I'm not happy with it, I try to go back and fix it with traditional materials, and adjust that way. I hope my head's not on the screen. Like for a piece like this, after the demo, I'll probably look at how it's going and see if it needs to be tweaked and stuff. Sometimes colors might need a second hit, if they're not as vibrant as you wanted them to be. Check that. Sometimes the first layer doesn't do it, and you have to go back. But then I try not to let digital editing for like a fully traditional piece be too dominant. But I mean, there's some times where it's just like helpful, like the series that I do with the graphite creatures. Like, sure, I edit those. I like give them like a cool paper texture. I don't change the drawing, but just give them a little formatting. The drawings are still good.
Audrey, you'll laugh at this. I'm just receiving a text message from my daughter, who's
Uh-huh.
right just about your age, I think,
Oh,
and she she told me about this in conversation a month ago or 2 months ago, that she wanted me. Uh, she's involved in somebody's wedding. She was married last year, but she's involved in one of her bridesmaids' weddings this year.
mhm.
And so she thought it'd be great if I did a painting for them and she gave it to them for a wedding present.
Oh
And so she's sending me all this reference. I'm like,
my gosh.
that's what it's come down to. Uh,
Well, she's commissioning it or asking.
no, she's asking. She's not commissioning anything. I'll do it for her. I'll do anything for her.
Oh, that's so cool.
Do you ever use Instagram filters when you post things to Instagram?
Only very lightly, like never something heavy enough that changes things. Like maybe something that like tweaks a little bit of the, the values. Because when you drop things from phone to computer and stuff, sometimes they look different and you just want to tweak it for that. But I do like some filters just for like color consistency on Instagram, but never like very much of it. Very limited.
Well, it makes complete sense to me watching you do this, because the thing I love about your work so much is the value control, your shape design in your pictures is
Yeah.
stunning. And it makes sense to me that you got to make the picture first. It's like before you think about anything else, you got to get the construct of your picture.
Yeah.
And you're nailing it.
Yeah, again, thanks for watching. I thought I'd be able to get through this a little quicker, but I think it's just the size.
You're doing fine. Don't worry.
Okay. But no matter what, I will finish it, and I'll even if we don't get to watch like the very, very ends, I'll go ahead and post it. Feels good to have to sit down and, just start something today and finish it. Sometimes I'll walk away from things and finish it the next week or whatnot.
You're probably doing the same thing I am in my studio. It's all of these demonstrations I've started in classes.
Oh
I
yeah.
I literally have about 20 of them now. And those aren't the drawings; those are just the paintings I've done over the last couple of years of unfinished. Probably the biggest one is 18 by 24, and I don't work really small, so that's on the kind of on the small side. But um, I just have them all over my studio, and there's some of them I really want to go back to and finish. I just can't make myself do it.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so with you there. My God.
I don't think that was I don't think that was Dorian a 10. Somebody's asked me, was that Dorian a 10? I hope it. I wish you would have said more if it was. It was a different Dorian. I didn't recognize. I didn't see a 10 as the last name. Dorian a 10 is a really good artist.
Nice.
Nice guy. getting to the skull.
Yeah, I was kind of nervous to get in there, but I gotta do it. I've drawn skulls before I can do this.
Well, if you find out if he was, Danielle, and tell him hello for me if you do. And I feel bad I didn't say anything to him if it was. I haven't talked to him in a long time. He was, I think he was in Spain the last time I spoke with him. Please do say hi for him for me, though.
I'm doing the some red line work in the face with watercolor. Oops. All right, John, I don't know how much longer you want me to go, but
Let's
it's up to you.
whenever you feel like you're at a good stopping point, let's put it that way.
Okay. All right, I'll ink down at the bottom once I resolve this face area and just put that in at least so it has a ground. Then
Good.
I'll send this.
Here's a good question from Garrett. What is something you've learned about making art from your students that you've
Oh,
used in your own work?
so many things. Gosh. What is something that I've learned from my students? Well, I mean, whenever you're teaching and you watch somebody go through process work, I mean, there's always things that you learn about that kind of stuff. Just looking at art through somebody else's mind. Well, one thing that I specifically learned from students is things about my communication style, like what communicates better than others. If I come into a class and everybody clearly understood what I was talking about, I know that I did a good job. So if not learning something specific, like being able to use that as a way to measure communicating well, I mean, that's important. So maybe I will jump around and test out some black watercolor, though. I don't usually like how it goes down. I don't mind combining the two. I think if I were to do this piece again, I would do it smaller and then maybe with some acrylic elements to it. But no, it's going fine.
Do you have any personal goals for your work?
Oh, all the time. I think like one of them is to just become more efficient with tools. I always want to work on my sense of color, and but other goals. No.
I'm kind of giggling, and Casey, I don't mean this directed at you. I'm just giggling that people are so into this, Audrey, that Casey Parsons writes, is it possible for Audrey to film the rest of this on her own and follow
Yes.
a demo or something?
Yeah.
No pressure. Would love to see the later steps. It's been a blast once again.
Yeah, I definitely can do that because I can record it, and thank you for everyone who's been understanding. Usually
You don't have to apologize.
like it's just hard to plan how long something's gonna take. Especially when you're a mixed media brain.
Yeah, I took an extra 30 or 40 minutes on mine, and then worked on it for probably an hour after I got done.
Okay, I don't feel bad anymore.
Oh, there's no reason to feel bad. This looks great, and
Yeah, nothing to feel bad about at all.
I would be doing the same exact thing. I want to say though, I love the area. I love the graphic that you're putting down, but to the left of that, where that red just has that very fluid kind of abstract feel in the
Mhm.
cape, that's gorgeous. That's just dynamite.
Thank you. Okay, I'm feeling better, guys. Thanks for letting me know that everybody takes time on things. I always think that I'm just the one that takes forever on things. But it'll be good. I'm curious to see. So how does the auction process go?
Well, we just put them up on the website and let everybody know they're for sale.
Oh, so it's not really like an auction.
It's not an auction. Well, if somebody, I mean, if we get multiple people, I guess it becomes that. But and we haven't been. Everything's been really moderately priced. So, and I think everything's sold.
Good.
And this will sell too.
I hope.
Oh, it will. Okay, I wasn't paying attention when this was asked, but it says, why with acrylic? More opaque colors?
Yeah. Sometimes when I work with acrylic, it makes colors richer. I don't know why. My watercolors just really didn't seem to be like being too rich with this piece. Like I wanted to really build that up. But sometimes the thing that I love to do with acrylics is glazing. So I sometimes will build up. It's almost like laying a multiply layer down in Photoshop. You just get things to be a little more saturated where you want them. That's what I like. I'm kind of making up the shadows a little bit here. Might be nice to have a figure to pose, but it's okay. I'm pretty sure everyone will just believe me.
And then Roger Pfister asks, is the summer semester Audrey's next class? I'm going to say yes, unless Audrey turns me down.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Well, it starts July 18th.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really quite fun. I've been loving having the two classes. It's been so cool to just I almost forget sometimes like who's in what class, and it's only class 2. But I find that I'm so prepared Monday morning because it's like I almost had like a dress rehearsal. It really like helps boost my Monday confidence.
You have a previous student saying Audrey is the coolest teacher ever.
What? Who said that?
Luann Teed.
Oh, she says current student.
Oh, current, well, a student. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She's in she gets the rehearsed class.
Yeah. No, she had the coolest thumbnails with the you had the ones with the geese in them, right? You just say in the chat, or because
Yes.
yeah, but yeah, she's from Boise. She knows. She had
Bill,
Bill. Yeah.
I knew that. Now I'm putting it all together.
Yeah,
Bill sent us a lot of students over the last few years.
that's great.
Annika, Audrey teaches with the Visual Arts Passage. That's what promotes these lectures. I'll type it in. Yeah, I'm kind of liking our lineup right now. You and John Foster teaching the first illustration course, and then Edward Kinsella teaching ideation, and Dale Stefanos teaching portfolio, and Sterling Hunley teaching industry development.
That's a good class to have.
Yeah. He's taking it all over the place too. And it's really smart. Different forms of income. Krista, she asked, how did Audrey get connected with Visual Arts Passage? I asked her. I begged her.
I said yes. Terrified, yes. Well, actually, I guess there's a little bit more to that, though. Like, you guys did ask me to do a workshop, right?
Right. Yeah, most of our, we've been doing that. Most everybody does like a lecture with us.
I guess I didn't even know it was kind of like a job interview.
Well, putting things together, aren't you? No.
Oh my God. You sneaky man.
Where will the recording be shown? The recording is on our website. Well, it's at Illustration Isolation. Here, give me 1 second. I'll post that. You can find all of the recordings from all 6 of these demos that we've done on the website.
I'm definitely getting more results here, so I'm feeling better about that.
Audrey, why don't we do this? Why don't we go for another 5 minutes, and then we'll have a hard ending. You know, it's going to be 5 minutes from now, and
That sounds fine to me.
and then
And then I can record any of the rest.
that's up to you. Your
Okay.
choice. If you do, send it to Timmy.
Yeah, that's not too hard. It's actually, I mean, it's really quite enjoyable to watch from the artist perspective too. Especially,
I don't know about that. I watched mine. I watched a few minutes of mine. And I was like, oh my God.
well, do you ever speed them up though?
Yeah,
'Cause-
yeah, as fast as possible.
yeah, because I love doing that. My watercolor painting with Imagine FX, I did that way, and I was like, I can paint fast.
How big is this piece?
This one
Yeah.
is 11 by 14. So bigger, I mean, like for this, I don't know. For me, it takes longer.
Yeah.
But it's not a giant piece, but it's big if you want to resolve everything.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, the way I work, it doesn't make much if it's the difference between something 14 square or 20 square. It's all the same. You know, it's just covering
It just depends what it is.
covering a little bit more ground, but not much. But you get beyond that, and then they start to take a lot more time.
Yeah. Also, for an image like this, I might want to mask off the edges, which I didn't do, but I am getting kind of an organic edge, which is cool. Definitely not mad about that. I do like things, like pieces of art where the edges on the piece are kind of part of the piece.
Well, I hope everybody in here knows about our Thursday night figure drawing. You can go to that same, we'll do it again, link and register for it. And we've had a number of really terrific artists join us, and we've spotlighted their drawings, and you can watch them draw or draw your own drawings, and it's been a lot of fun. And every night we've had, I know we've had over 300 people in the room before, so a lot of people attend. It's 100 plus 150 or 200 people post their work every night also, which is just hysterically fun.
It's an art party.
It is. It's a good art party with some really good artists there.
Yeah. When things go back to normal, you won't find company like this.
No, we're gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, it is really great. No, I think it'd be a great thing to keep going.
I laugh at like George Pratt, who calls me about, okay, what time am I supposed to be there? I mean, about everything we do, except I think the last 3 times he's been to drawing like an hour before we started.
I mean,
he shows up.
it's so great too, because I swear when I moved to Ann Arbor, like, most medium-sized cities, they have like some kind of figure class, but I could never find when they had like their figure classes, and I was always so bummed out looking around here and stuff, and I was like, now this year, strangely enough, and that's way more available for me. Oh, that's cool.
We have, Audrey, did you know that our guest for the Illustration Academy lecture this Sunday is Wesley Burt?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Is that the first week of Illustration Academy?
It's our third. We did.
Third.
Yeah.
Said Bill was last week.
Yeah, Bill Sienkiewicz, and then a group of us did the first night, and then George follows Wesley, and then Ian McCaig on the 5th night. I'm looking forward to those.
Me too. So is that they're always Sundays?
Those are Sundays. Yeah, it's our it's our digital version this year of the Illustration Academy.
Oh, that's good.
A little painful actually. It's worked out really well. I've enjoyed the lectures, but not being able to
go out to dinner and stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's our 26th year. And
oh, really?
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so I guess you guys started in what, like 92 or 94?
95.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, I'm gonna be 27 this year. It's so funny. I laugh at like Spectrum is the same age as I am. So the number of the year that comes out is.
Are you 27 already?
just going to turn 27.
Yeah, because Spectrum's Arnie and Kathy they started the same year the Academy did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's like you're always at kind of a year ahead. I mean, you do one, you have an extra year in there.
Right. Yeah. But I remember so did Spectrum come out in 93 then, or?
95.
Really?
Yeah.
I have Spectrum 93 though.
Well,
Like I have a copy that says 93 on it.
well.
Maybe that was before it was like official or something.
Right. I don't know, but Arnie told me that we were started the same time. I was doing the Academy. I judged it in Spectrum 3, and it was our 3rd year of the Academy. So
Interesting.
I don't know if there was something before they started numbering it where they did the year, where they did day.
Yeah, maybe, but there was a Spectrum that is 1993 and it's hilarious. But there's actually a Gurney painting on the cover. And it's really beautiful, and it's really interesting to look at the digital art in it, just because of the
Right.
just the 90s digital art is really interesting. But I've found some of the pieces that were in children's books that I loved.
That's how I discovered John Foster.
Oh.
I mean, I personally, I mean, he was discovered not because of me, how I personally ran across.
Well done. You discovered.
Trying to take credit for that. Somebody's asking, John, did you say Bill Sienkiewicz was on or coming up? He was part of the Illustration Academy last week. He did ask me about doing one of these things, though. Hopefully I can corral him. Okay, so our 5 minutes is now 10 minutes.
All right.
And I'm going to say, I'm going to say, hey, I think this was fantastic. Audrey, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I look forward to having this up on the website. And thank you for being so generous to do this and donate it. And go
Absolutely. Yeah, this was really fun. I loved all of your questions. And for any that I didn't exactly have an answer to, I still thank you for them. I love picking my brain, and sometimes it's hard to think while I'm working, but I ultimately really appreciate the conversation and the company, and just taking the time.
Well,
So,
I think you set a record for questions.
really?
Yeah. We did 80 in the Q&A, and I probably did another 15 or 20 off the Q&A.
Well, I love talking, so doesn't bother me.
Audrey, it was wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you so much.
Hey,
you guys have a great rest of your week.
Before we go, can you pull the camera away a little bit so we can see the whole thing? Just back it up slightly, even if you hand hold it.
So I'll probably work on getting it a bit more.
Awesome.
Sorry. Like the saturation of the parts that connect in the color, but ultimately all the parts are there.
Yep.
So.
Here's the picture. It's beautiful. Looking forward to seeing it all wrapped up.
All right, will do.
Great. Thanks so much. Thank you, everybody.
All right, take care.